All right, everyone, welcome back. So we continue our prospect pool overviews today with the Philadelphia Flyers. Cool. I didn't choose this, by the way. It was in random order, so it's cool that I got my favorite team for the second video. So, nice. All right, Philadelphia. So, their prospect pool has definitely improved a lot since probably I started this YouTube channel, to be honest. They've drafted some very notable forwards and some good defensemen. And, these five that I'm about to mention are pretty bright players in this future. Could be a lot brighter than Flyers fans may think, and that NHL fans may think. Now, I'm not saying that all these guys are going to pan out and be so good and all that stuff, but there is a lot of positivity here now following this past year's draft that makes me a little bit happier for the future, and it's only going to get better when we're worse or next year. So, yeah, it's gonna be fun. All right, Cutter Gauthier to start off here. He was our pick in the 2022 draft, 5th overall. He's a left wing / center from Skelfeda, Sweden. He's 6'2", 194 pounds, so he's got that perfect size. He won a World Junior Silver in 21-22 and won a World Junior 20 Bronze in 22-23. With Boston College this past year, he played 32 games, had 16 goals, 21 assists, for 37 points. So he put up great stats there in the NCAA. And I like Gauthier a lot because he's a guy who, could fit well as a center. And he can play both left wing and center, too, which works out very well for our power play. We could have Michkov on that right wing side and then have, Cutter as the center. It could work out perfectly. And it could be a perfect first line dynamo there, or a power play dynamo. Honestly, this prospect pool, like this entire list that I'm about to read, could be the first line. Like, literally could be the first line of the offense in a few years. It literally, quite literally could be. Now, there's a lot of rumors with Cutter Gauthier and him not wanting to play in Philadelphia. He hasn't signed just yet, and he is going to go back to Boston College for another year. And that is a little bit of a worry, but honestly, I'm not too worried about it. I'm really not. Yes, he didn't come to development camp. That is something to keep in mind, but if there was any indication he didn't want to stay with Philadelphia, we'd probably know by now. But honestly, he's probably waiting till they're better. Honestly, he could wait until after the year is over or come back, or maybe there's an issue with John Tortorella. Who knows? Honestly, we don't know that much with Gauthier. I'm not worried about it right now. It could become a problem later, but if it is a problem, then we can probably just move him for assets. But we're probably in a bad situation there if we have to. But yeah, of course, he hasn't been signed yet. But Gauthier, I'm not too worried about that. After next year, and he doesn't sign an entry-level deal, I'll be worried then. I'll be worried then for sure. Next up then is, of course, our pick for this year, Matvei Michkov. And it would be a joke of a video if I didn't mention him. Michkov, he was born in Perm, Russia. He's a right wing, and he's 5'10", 172 pounds. He's one of my favorite players now. Look, I liked him a lot. He was next to Ovechkin. I loved it. I didn't think he'd be on my team, though. And you guys saw my reaction when he was drafted. I lost my mind. Like, it blew my mind. It blew me away. And I still can't believe that we got him. He won the Hlinka Gretzky Cup in 21-22, and he had a better draft year than Ovechkin did in less games, and he was injured as well. So that was something that really struck out to me. And the fact about that, too, is that he wanted to be a Flyer. He wanted to be a Philadelphia Flyer. He wanted to be on this team, and he said he didn't want to go to Washington or Arizona or any of those teams for that matter, and that makes me so unbelievably happy that somebody wants to come to Philly. It's just an awesome feeling, honestly. With HK Sochi, which is the MHL, I believe. He played 27 games, had 9 goals, 11 assists for 20 points. Of course, not that bad of stats, but, being hurt, that does play a factor. He is an elite scorer. We already knew that. I forgot to mention for Cutter. He has a lethal shot and some great size, too. That's what Cutter has. I completely forgot about that. So, yeah, Cutter could be an exciting forward for us. Sorry, I kind of went off track. But with Michkov, there is the KHL contract. That is something to keep in mind. And I'm not really worried about it. I don't know why people are so worried about it. Because, in fact, an example of, it's just college, but it's Russia. College in Russia, pretty much. And he's also playing against men as well in the KHL. So, like, honestly, I'm not really that worried about it. Yes, it is a little bit of concern, but I'm not really worried about it all too much. Because, honestly, it's just like college. Like, there are players that leave that don't come to their team for almost 3 years because they decide to stay the long term with college. And that's what Michkov's doing. And even then, who knows? They could ring up the phones and make something work, and you could come over even earlier. We have no idea. right now. But honestly, I'm not too worried about it. Bobby Brink's a big example of that. He got drafted in 2019, started playing games this year for us. So that's a huge example there. Cutter as well. He was drafted in 2022, and he's going into his second year of college, so he probably won't be playing till 24, 25, most likely, or at the end of this coming season. So, like, honestly, I'm not worried about it as much as people are, and honestly, too, it's going to be a steal come playoff time, and he's on the ELC, and we got other guys locked up to good deals, and Michkov still in that entry-level contract. It's huge for us. Absolutely huge. And it gives Michkov time to learn English as well. And I know that's a little bit of a different thing, but he still has time to do that for sure. Tyson Forster, I have up next. Tyson Forster was a right wing from Alliston, Canada, 6 foot, 294 pounds. He won the World Junior Championship 20 and 21, 22. I believe he won it with Oliver Bonk, if I'm correct. He did not. Bonk won the Henrik Gretzky. Tyson Forster, he won the WJC 20 in 21-22. Drafted 23rd overall in 2020 by the Flyers. I didn't hate it at first. I was like, it'll be all right. He'll develop a little bit, take a little bit of time. But he actually played games this year with the Flyers and played pretty damn good. He played pretty damn good. He played 8 games, had 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points with Philly this past year. So he's technically still a prospect, but that's huge. Seeing a guy like that kind of reminds me, and I'm not saying he will be him, but that reminds me a lot of Matthew Beniers. Matty Beniers did the same thing. Like, he came over, played about 10 games, had 9 points. Forster played 8 games, had 7 points. So that's impressive there. That's impressive for a guy like him. And he could be a player that coming in next year could make a spot on the Flyers roster with a guy like James Van Riemsdyk gone on that left wing side. And it gives Forster, or right wing side, sorry. It gives Forster plenty of options there too. But if he wants to stay with the Phantoms, he can. And he had a pretty damn good year with the Phantoms as well. Playing 66 games, had 20 goals, 28 assists, 48 points. That's great. Like that's really good. For a player like him playing in his second season in the AHL. So he kind of took the same path as the player we talked about in the other video, James Hamblin, who played a few games with the Oilers this past year, but played a lot of it in the AHL. Forster could take that big step next season. He really could. And like, that's one of the players that I'm excited to watch this coming year. He's listed as having a solid all-around game, but he is a weak skater. If he can work on that, then he could be a perfect player in the NHL for us. He could be a great second liner, fit in that Van Riemsdyk role, fit it on the power play. That could be awesome for us, for sure. Emil Andre, we'll move into the defensive prospects now. Andre's a defenseman from Västervik, Sweden, so I don't think he knows Cutter Gauthier, but he should be at least in the same realm as him. 5'9", 181 pounds, so he's a little bit of a shorter defenseman, but he was a Hockey Allsvenskan champ in 21-22. I probably said that wrong. I apologize. But he also was drafted 54th overall in 2020, so the same year as Tyson Forster. He played 10 games this past year with the Phantoms, had no points. But that is something to keep in mind there. He did make the jump to the AHL for a little bit this past year. But he did play with the HV71 in the SHL and put up 51 games, played 6 goals, 20 assists, 26 points, which is good for a defenseman. And he could come over to the AHL next year, develop a little bit, maybe play some games for the Flyers. You know, Andre's a positive player, I think, and he's a guy who I look at and say, well, we have a weak defense generally. Getting a guy like Andre on our blue line that's young and is hopeful, even though he's a little bit shorter than others, could be a great thing for us for sure. Or he's just going to be the next Ivan Provorov. But he plays aggressive and has good mobility, which is what he's listed as a player. He can shut down plays as well. That's what I've seen in articles. So a very positive player there in Emil Andre. Next up, I have the guy we also drafted this past year, Oliver Bonk. And I considered going after other prospects that weren't drafted this past year. But it'd be a crime if I didn't go after Bonk and Michkov because they're kind of the cornerstones, I guess. Well, not Bonk, but Michkov is the cornerstone and Bonk's the other guy who could be a solid top 4 defenseman. He's ranked number 20th in North American skaters, which is pretty significant for a defenseman. He's a defenseman from Ottawa, Canada. He's 6 foot, 276 pounds, winning the Hlinka Gretzky Cup in 22-23. He was drafted 22nd overall in this past year's draft, so of course that's something to keep in mind. And of course he's played with the AHL for the majority of his career. He played with the London Knights, had 67 games played, 10 goals, 30 assists, 40 points. He's known for his shutdown defense and his great IQ, which is perfect. I cannot tell you how perfect that is to hear. Having a shutdown defense is awesome, especially with a guy like, Ivan Provorov leaving, who literally would piss me off so much about that. having a guy like Oliver Bonk coming into the system now could be perfect. And he'd take some time for him to develop. Maybe he plays a game. Maybe he plays some time with London this coming season. Probably will. Maybe get some time with the Flyers. Maybe he plays with the AHL. Who knows? Bonk could go any path he wants to. He could spend another year with London. It's really not decided as of right now. But Bonk's one of those players that I'm excited about too on that blue line for Philadelphia. And finally, the goalie. And the goalie situation in Philly is actually kind of interesting because you have Ivan Fedorov, you have Carter Hart, you have Felix Sandstrom, you have Cal Peterson now, and you also have Samuel Ersson too. Factor in as a goalie. He's a goalie from Falun, Sweden. He's 6'2", 276 pounds. He was drafted 143rd overall in 2018. So he's been in the organization for a while. And again, this is something that I mentioned last episode. Goalies take time to develop. That's a big thing with goaltenders. They're going to take more time than others. Their timetable is actually more unpredictable than it is players. So that is something you got to keep in mind there if you're, looking at goalies like this. But Ersson, 12 games played this past year with the Flyers, 6-3-0, 3.07 goals against average, and a .899 save percentage. The only reason why those stats are kind of not that good, really, is because, he had like 2 to 3 games towards the end of the season that were just terrible. Like, he had a 6-1 loss against the Devils, and then I think he had a blowout against the Hurricanes, too, which was bad. So those 2 games, you take those 2 games out, he actually has a pretty good stat line. And he also had a shutout in the NHL as well. So that is something you got to factor in there, too. But Ersson also played 42 games this past year with the Phantoms, had a 24-17-1 record, a 2.84 goals against average, and a .900 save percentage. You could argue he got hot at the right time in Philadelphia. I don't think so, though. I think he could be an exciting, backup, maybe even the starter if we decide to trade Hart for the Flyers for sure. But he'll likely be the starter for Lehigh Valley this coming season. I can't see a world where we put Cal Peterson in the AHL. I really just can't see it, to be honest with you. So it just sucks, but he's going to have to be there for now. But I think Peterson's expiring after this past season. So there's a lot of questions there in the goaltending realm with Philly. There's a lot of goalies there that are leaving some questions. So yeah, those are the 5 prospects I wanted to mention for Philly. The other guys that are in the system as other prospects, and there's a good amount of them. You have Ronnie Attard, defenseman Yeager Zamula, left wing Elliot Desnoyers, who's looked very positive. Right wing Ollie Leixell, center Jay O'Brien, and goaltender, of course, Ivan Fedorov. But there's a whole situation there that's not been unraveled just yet. But yeah, that is my prospect pool overview for the Philadelphia Flyers. Thank you all for watching. We'll do another team tomorrow. Not sure who right now. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.